everyone, welcome back to Wigs for Life. So today I just, as the title suggests, I wanted to talk about how I'm dealing. I can't say how I've dealt, but how I'm dealing with the passing of my father. So it's very difficult. I feel like this is sort of talking about it and treating myself. Yeah, it's been very weird. My dad passed away last year, and perhaps I should give a background to me and my dad's relationship. I'm his only child, and I always felt special because of that, where my dad was concerned. And I feel like my father has always showed me unconditional love. I felt like a princess with my father, and I always felt quite loved. And as I got older, we still had our father-daughter relationship, but we became buddies, you know, great friends as well. And to be honest, when he passed away, I wasn't expecting it. I mean, as a child and as an adult, you know that as the years go by, the chances increase of your parents passing away. It's probably an inevitable thing, but I sort of wasn't expecting it. And it sounds strange me saying this, but I had dreams about it happening, but didn't quite realize that that's what the dreams meant. And I know this sounds weird, but for about a year before my father passed away, I had recurrent dreams of somebody coming to wake us up in the middle of the night, a neighbor saying her husband was having a heart attack. And my dad died from acute heart failure, and he was on his own, and it was in the middle of the night. So yeah, strange, right? A week before he died, I had two dreams, and in both dreams, it's almost as if I was burying someone or somebody was at a funeral, and I was crying. And the last dream, I was sobbing uncontrollably, and I woke up with tears in my eyes. That's how real the dream was. And I just didn't link it to my dad because he was well or seemed well. Obviously he'd been unwell for a bit, but he didn't divulge. He was in Jamaica and I was here in England. He didn't tell me. And for maybe a month before he died, when you've got heart issues, you tend to lose quite a bit of weight fast, and that happened. But he didn't tell me. I don't know why. We were just preparing for him to come back and visit us. For maybe 6 years or so, he used to go back and forth, spend 6 months here and then 6 months in Jamaica. And we were just preparing for the next stint. And I was coming home from work, and my uncle called to say, "Guess what? Your dad's died." And I was like, "What?" And it was a shock, and I felt cold inside, and I felt cold inside for a very long time. But initially, the first few weeks, so cold inside that I couldn't eat, I couldn't drink. Yeah. But I went to work the next day, and I work in a surgical setting, and I promised a patient that I'd be in theatre with him, and I went. That was really hard, of course. He was having treatment for head and neck cancer, and it was hard seeing them cut into the person. And although that was something that I was used to, it just brought home my father's death too close, if you see what I mean. But being stoic, I went out and I cried, and then went back in because I'd made that promise. And I know that sounds stupid, but it was how I coped. If any of you have lost somebody that you hold dear, how did you deal with it? I mean, I always assumed I would fall apart, have a nervous breakdown or something, and sometimes I question whether or not that's not happening, because the way I've dealt with it has been quite weird. Yeah, it's been very hard. Some things trigger his memory other than others, and recently, the last week, I have been thinking about him intently again. But I don't know if that's because I've just come back from Jamaica, from putting his headstone on and the memorial and all of that. And that's the usual thing we do a year after the death. Yeah, so it's been, I found myself crying out of the blue, just like I did when he just died. But the weirdest thing is, whilst we were there at the memorial and everybody was talking about how lovely a man he was and all the jokes and the things he used to say that was just so funny. My father was hilarious. I didn't feel sad, and in a way, I felt content that I was there. I could touch his grave. He was there, but not there, if you see what I mean. It's weird, guys. I just went back to work. I just got on with life. But inside, I have felt like I don't know what the proper word, the word I want to use. I won't say I'm dying slowly inside, but maybe shutting down a little day by day. And trying to cope with the fact that I'm never ever going to see him again. I'm never going to have him hug me again or sing the happy birthday song to me again. That was another thing, guys. My dad had a special way of singing the birthday song, and as long as I can remember, I've had that sung to me by my dad. And last year was obviously my first birthday after he died. You wouldn't believe how many people sung me the birthday song. It was almost as if he'd sent somebody to sing it to me. And he was such a special man. And Father's Day is next Sunday. And yet again, sorry guys, I'm well up. Yet again, another Father's Day will come and go, and I can't tell him Happy Father's Day. I feel sometimes like a little bit of an orphan. that love that I had from my dad is irreplaceable. And nobody can give it back. Yeah, so nobody can give that love back to me. Nobody can replace it in a million years. What the kind of dad he was that which I'm sure every daughter, every son will say the same thing. But he was like no other. He was an example that other men, if they want to be good dads, would strive to be. And I'm going to miss that. And sometimes I feel like even my children, as love them as I do, their love even can't replace it, because it's a different sort of love. The way you love as a parent is so unconditional. And at the minute I've got teenagers, so it's very conditional. And I know they love me. And I know my husband loves me. But their love, it's different, you know? And so I miss him dearly. And I just wanted to just have a conversation with millions of people. No, honestly, when we record, obviously you record talking to this camera, and I felt like maybe this is something I ought to do or say to help me get things right in my head. Father's Day is just around the corner. It's next week Sunday, and the fact that I've just come back from Jamaica, and even though when I was there I never felt teary, actually I felt like I was home and I was with him, you know, his grave's there and everything. I'd never cried, but since I've been home it's been very strange, and my emotions have been up and down a lot. And I don't know if those two things together is what's prompting me to feel the way I am. Like, I don't know when I'll visit his grave again. And if, it's strange. But yeah, I feel like I've not dealt with his death in a positive way, so that I can go through all the stages of grief and be in a place where I feel comfortable. Obviously, somebody's passing is never something you get over completely, but my emotions are so intense sometimes that I wonder if my initial response to just try and get through the day, don't think about it, don't dwell on it, was maybe the wrong thing to do. Maybe I should have just swam in grief and tried not to be so strong. But I don't know if when you're going through losing someone you love, if the way you respond is much like your personality. So whatever response you give is probably just because of who you are. But I miss my father so, so, so much. And I wish he hadn't died. I wanted him to live to see his great-grandchildren. His mom did. Well, she's still here with us. And I don't know when I'm going to get over this or when it's going to get easier. But my way of dealing with it was getting back in the saddle and trying to carry on. But that initially was great, but in retrospect, I don't know if maybe that was the right thing to do, because the intense pain I still feel when I think about my father is just as great as when he first died. Like, out of the blue, you just think, oh, he's dead. He's actually dead. Yeah, so that feeling is still there, and I hope maybe in another year's time I can do another video and we can see where I am at that point. And I hope this has somehow been a little bit helpful for those of you who have just lost a loved one. Grief is grief and it is very individual. So the way you respond is just your way. And I'm not going to come on here and tell anybody you should do this, you should do that. There are 5 stages, blah, blah, blah. Because grief is individual. And the one thing you need to remember is that loved one would not want you to break down, would not want you to suffer, would not want you to wallow. They would want you to try and carry on. And you don't have to be as stoic as I was, going back to work the next day. But I needed that. I needed to be, that's how I felt at the time. I needed to be around others. Or else I felt like I was just going to fall apart. So, but you don't have to do that. Do you, and look after yourself. And I hope this is helpful. And I might do an update at some point and see where I am at with accepting the passing of my lovely, lovely father. Winston Jones. Love you, Daddy.